long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place.
Talking Bird, the special edition.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Bird, the special edition, episode 19. We finally move out of our parents' basement. I am your host, Robert Zachary, along with my co-host, John Llewellyn. Hello, John.
Hello.
Hello.
We're gonna get a van. We're gonna airbrush it.
We're gonna airbrush
it.
it.
It's gonna be cherry, man.
I'm gonna put the Imperials on one side and the Rebels on the other side.
Han Solo on the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Han Solo and Chewie on the back. The wild
That's
card.
right. That's right.
How goes it?
Oh, it's fine.
It's fine.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I'm bringing a lot of energy to this podcast, aren't I? No, it's good. It's good. How are you?
I'm all right. It's one of those things.
When you do one of these every week, some weeks it's fine.
It was it wasn't a very Star Wars-y kind of week.
We're a little light on news.
I didn't spend a lot of time.
Heavy on speculation.
Yes. There's going to be a lot of speculating, possibly some spoilerish conversations, me pontificating on my feelings about Star Wars. But that's every week. It's like, that's the thing. If I drop dead, it's like my only grand testament to the world will be like, boy, he really talked about Star Wars a lot. It'll be one of those things where they hire the person to officiate.
Wow, he talked about Star Wars a lot.
Yeah, and they'll be like...
No, I mean a lot.
Yeah, 2 hours a week, just off. I mean, I think that's all the guy ever thought about.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, pretty much.
That's right. There's a lot. It's exciting. It's a fun topic. It's something that we're into. Why not 2 hours a week, right?
Exactly. But yeah, it's one of those, like I said, I almost suggest we do a bye week, but we got to power through. We got to keep the inertia going. So if we don't learn how to deal with the slow weeks, then how are we going to earn the fast weeks?
That's right.
I went to 2 toy stores this week last week out of just kind of general curiosity about the stock of Force Awakens toys. And I left empty-handed because I'm kind of, like I said, I keep coming across like, hey, I didn't know I had this. So I'm not really in the mood to buy, but I'm just kind of curious what they have, what they're slapping the picture on. Speaking of slapping a picture, just a quick digression. After I think last week's show, I emailed John about this promotion that Walmart is doing for Star Wars Battlefront, and that's a must buy game for me. But they had this thing. Oh, if you buy at Walmart, you get a Han Solo and Carbonite mini fridge. So
fridge.
It can hold a 6-pack of your favorite sodas. Right. And I was tempted.
You open up the fridge, grab a cold one, and say, "Someone who loves you," and then you drink it.
Exactly. And I thought, well, I used to have a larger mini fridge that I gave away, and I've kind of
like a midi fridge. Is that what that is? If it's bigger than a mini fridge.
Yeah, exactly. Did you say a midi fridge?
Yeah, midi fridge.
I can interface it with a sequencer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a midi fridge. It's in the midi. It's in the middle.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'm in the market. I'm in the market for some cool drinks. I'm always in the market for something cold.
Mm-hmm.
Then I found out it's only like a cheap gray mini fridge with a sticker on it.
I see.
And I'm not paying an extra $60 for a game for that. No, sir.
How much are the mini fridges there normally?
I don't know. It's one of those things I've never considered. I never really considered it until somebody slapped a sticker on it.
Right.
Because
maybe I do need a mini fridge next to my desk.
Well, it's in my. We have an entertainment lair at the house.
Yeah.
With the video game machine and the TV and we have to go up the stairs for refreshment. But maybe that's good because then I can burn some calories.
You're not winning, Robert. That's not winning.
What's winning? What do I want to win? Is it?
I don't know. Just the idea that you're like, oh, you're winning. Win.
Not winning. I'm never winning.
On Walmart.com, you can get a 1.7 cubic foot single door refrigerator for $71.86. You can get a portable mini fridge cooler and warmer for $50, $49.95. Excuse me.
That's about the size.
Let me sort this from low to high. Yep, those are your cheaper options on Walmart.com.
I could just put some Star Wars stickers on them or something, and it would be a Star Wars mini.
Or get out the old tempera paint, the old watercolors, some charcoals maybe, and go to town on your own.
Yeah, I am not an artist by any stretch of the imagination. Now, when I was a kid, my neighbor, she was an artist, and she painted up the kid's bedroom with the Millennium Falcon, and she made Star Wars cakes for birthdays. Like my brother had a Yoda cake that was looked just like Yoda, but with the whatever they call it, the frosting. It's looked like little stars, and they put them together. And the ears were made out of Twinkies.
Yeah.
So
there you go. I assume they were painted green Twinkies, though.
Well, no, it was like underneath the frosting.
Oh, I see.
The green frosting, there was the yellow Twinkie. I think. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
This show is...
Wait, you don't remember this Yoda cake from like 30 years ago?
30. I wish it was 30 years ago. I think it was more
35
like
years
35
ago.
years ago.
Whatever. I took a guess. I took a guesstimate.
Man, we are running off the rails already today.
I think Yoda cakes are close enough.
Exactly.
So, but all right. So I'll steer this.
So as you know, we've got a new sponsor. It's it's your only pharmaceutical delivery company. No, just kidding. I think we sound like we're high. It's 1:00 in the afternoon.
We're not.
I'm drinking coffee.
It's kind of hot here. I don't know if that is what's doing it.
Yeah, see,
episode 8. Episode 8 has started filming, Robert.
So I'm shocked.
Are you excited about episode 8 filming?
No, I'm not, because I'm confused as hell. I was like, so they were talking like, oh, Mark Hamill, he's gone back to Skellig Michael in Ireland, which is a place.
Right. These were going to be reshoots for episode 7, allegedly, initially.
And now all of a sudden they're telling this is for episode 8. So either they're doing two things. They're like, oh, well, we're going to go there and reshoot the stuff. Because I know he had a beard.
Yeah.
He had his beard. And then they had some pictures of him at the pub pouring drinks for people, and he didn't have the beard. So maybe they are filming two different movies there.
Could be. I mean, and I guess what I read, what a lot of people probably read, is that it has something to do with the seasons at Skellig Michael, and because it's a World Heritage Site, and there are these bird populations there. Like there are certain times of the year that they don't really like people being there, or at least using for commercial purposes that way. So it could be that they're like, well, we've got this window. Let's just take care of it now. Rather than wait another 6 months and maybe not be able to do it. But then at the same time, right, this movie is also a couple years away, right?
2017. 17, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do we
May
have
26, 2017.
so do we
So
have
we're, just under 2 years away.
do we have any reports that it was like did J.J. Abrams go, or is it just a second unit thing, or Ryan Johnson?
So the only name I saw, like, confirmed name was Hamill. Now I saw a rumor that someone else was there that we can talk about later. But yeah, it didn't mention who was filming it, who was shooting it, who else might have been there in terms of crew, or, like you said, maybe it was the second unit, maybe they were just doing like pickups in advance, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like that situation in episode 2, I guess, when Lucas tried to film a early version of the Luke handoff to Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, but every indication, if you watch it, they actually refilmed that because he looks,
right.
It's a different shot, and it's obviously composited in a computer. I mean, it's good. I mean, I guess it's good that if they realize
it's possible. Yeah, it's possible they just needed like a couple shots in this location because it's not going to be a huge part of episode 8,
right?
And then they're like, all right, we got it, we're done.
But it does kind of belie the point that one of my big theories that I don't think I talked about on the show is that involves Luke not being alive at the end of this movie.
Right.
But I guess that's wrong. I mean, I don't think they'd go to all this trouble for a red herring, right? Yeah,
I mean, and this is something that I was thinking about, and we sort of chatted about off the air, but I would feel like, okay, maybe Hamill, they can say, okay, he'll be in episode 8. They can get away with that. But then any of the other big actors, big main cast, they can't really do anything with them until episode 7 comes out, and it's probably out for a while, I would think. Because there's all this, they're trying to be so secretive about these movies, and we'll see how much of that secrecy lasts after J.J. Abrams sort of moves on, right? How much of this secrecy is him, and because we've heard this is so much about him and the mystery box or whatever, and how much of this is actually Disney and Lucasfilm sort of adopting that as their own posture and saying, what, we want to sort of keep this under our hat for a while and just let people go nuts for it on their own. Because anytime they start filming, then like you pointed out, then everyone goes like, oh, okay, so they're not going to die in episode 7, which, would potentially lessen any kind of dramatic conflict that might arise. And I don't know what, will happen in episode 7, but if you had a scene where they're trying to convey that, this character's life is in danger or something, but like, oh, I know they already started filming episode 8 like a year ago. So I'm not going to feel the emotions that they're trying to land with the scene. And it's also, I mean, the other side of that, I guess, is that we can probably assume that the main young, at least the young principals, will be in all 3 movies, or at least the first 2.
Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically of John Boyega and Daisy Ridley, but probably Adam Driver. I mean, we've heard the least from him out of all of these people, but it sounds like everything we're hearing about Kylo Ren, it sounds like he'll be a major figure in this trilogy. Oscar Isaac, I could see going either way. I could see him sort of being the Harrison Ford type, or the Harrison Ford posture, where he'll say like, yeah, I'll do 1 and maybe 2, but maybe don't count on me for all of them because I have other work that I might want to pick up. So
yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah,
actually,
and I don't know.
I've heard Daisy Ridley's the only person who's actually signed on to do all 3. I was reading a thing today, so it'll be interesting. I mean, I was thinking about this last night that I've kind of, even though I say, oh yeah, here's a spoiler, it's like I don't know I'm speculating when they have these spoiler tags on websites and stuff. I kind of scroll and I maybe peek at the first line and then I roll back.
Right. Yeah,
so that's about as spoiled as... I'm actually thinking I'm going to go for episode 8. I'm going to go for like a heavy spoiler experience.
Really?
I think, I don't know. I mean, it might be a problem. Maybe we're going to have to come to that if we're going to keep continuing doing this show as the years go on. We're going to have a conversation whether we're going to do. I guess we should have a consensus, because I think it would be a really awful show if we're sitting there and I'm like, you're speculating and I'm going, I've heard otherwise.
Yeah. Right. It was like, oh, that's an interesting theory.
Yeah. Which is kind of has been
getting warmer.
Well, it's like I hear that on some Game of Thrones podcast where one person like, oh, I've read every book, and one person's like, I haven't read any of the books, and then up until recently, when they've run out of books, they would say, oh, I think this is going to happen, and the person would go, you're wrong. Kind of thing. And it's like, so...
Oh, you'll see. I guess we'll find out.
I guess I'm springing it on you, and I'm not actually... it's like... I don't know. Maybe that
I feel like I will have to make that decision after I see episode 7.
Exactly.
Like, how much... Not even emotional investment, but, like, how much, honestly, mental energy I want to expend, like, trying to avoid seeing these spoilers for episode 8. Because, I mean, the other thing, too, is I can't imagine how much it's going to ramp up. Because there's already this small cottage industry that kind of sprang up overnight of, trying to get these scoops and post spoilers about, new characters and maybe plot, or, oh, I saw these character designs and it looks like they might be on a desert planet again. That already sprung up so much so quickly. I mean, for this episode 7, I mean, 2-3 years from now, when they're doing the Boba Fett movie or episode 9, who knows what it's going to be like then? How much faster and how much faster, more intense?
Yeah, I was going to say
that kind of impetus to to basically get all of the information about the movie out there as much as possible is going to be. And this highlights something that also came up this week. So on the one hand, you have these websites trying to get as many scoops as they can, like I said, and I just kind of like saying the word scoops. Scoops, they're in it for the scoops. Posting, they're posting plot rumors and casting stuff. The thing of like, oh, we heard that they offered it to either Benicio del Toro or Joaquin Phoenix, that kind of thing.
Oh God, Joaquin Phoenix in Star Wars.
Well, the role that Benicio del Toro took, I guess, in episode 8 is like the main villain. Okay. I thought that initial story said that they had offered it to Joaquin Phoenix first, and he said no.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too. That there was some talk.
Right. So there's that, right? Which, I mean, I understand wanting to get like wanting to get like the notice or the attribution of being the first one to report these things, but at the same time, like, it's a Star Wars movie. Right, like if you get credit for posting this first, or having like an inside source that shows you the character sketch for Yak Face, or not Yak Face, what's his name?
Oh, the guy,
Bullhead.
Bullhead.
Right. Like, what does that get you? This isn't the Pentagon Papers. It's not like a real thing that you need to bust through the wall of secrecy to reveal to the unsuspecting public. So the amount of effort that's going into this, I think, is a little overdone.
Oh, I mean, it's the secondary economy of Star Wars fandom. It's the
right.
It's like there's no real. It's hard. It's like that. The idea of youthful anticipation is usurped by the idea of like, well, I mean, come and think about it. It's indicative of how we do our news. Everything.
Right.
The way I won't go too far off. I'm not going to make a big point, but we have all this. CNN, we got all these things, and they're constantly, updating stories in this kind of way where it's like the story evolves so much that it bears almost no relation to where it started. I mean, I think, bringing it back to Star Wars, I think about this, the Phantom Menace or whatever, the prequels were really the birth of, existed around the birth of home internet. Yeah, I know people had it in the mid 90s and stuff, but
right. But the kind of widespread.
Yeah, when when all of a sudden you find out your grandma has internet, kind of situation, you know, 90s. And there was a guy, and I think he was I want to say he was a Franciscan monk or something. I mean, he was literally like, he was in clergy. He was in one of the clergy that they can't get married. So he had a lot of time on his hands.
There's a lot of it.
He wrote for, you know, years on this thing about he would take every little rumor that he heard and he would try to construct I think they were called the virtual prequels. And I didn't spend a ton of time on them because, again, my whole uncomfortable with that amount of spoilage. But he would construct these elaborate plot points that were so more arcane and actually, in some respects, more interesting than what Lucas actually came up with. There was this idea that episode 2 was going to deal with a love triangle between Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin, and Padme, and the idea that the impetus behind, you know, Darth Vader's turn was his jealousy of Obi-Wan, which was something that I think Lucas toyed with, but briefly in episode 2 and 3. But he, you know, since he, like I talked about last week, he has such an uncomfortable history with his depictions of sexuality in his movies. Yeah. Either he's not comfortable writing it or he's just uncomfortable with the subject. It was like there's 2 lines in the prequel trilogy when it was this thing where basically when they're sitting outside of her room while she's sleeping and the assassins are getting ready to send the assassin worms. Right. Here, quick aside. Why did Jango Fett have to use Zam Wessel to do this? Why didn't he just like put a bomb on the side of her wall and blow the thing up?
I don't know. That kind of bugs me too. That I guess he wanted to make sure that it couldn't be tied back to him, so he used an intermediary, but then
it's like the whole
meets with this intermediary wide out in the open where anyone can see them.
And then he hands her that thing and he goes, "Be careful, they're very dangerous." Obviously they're dangerous. It's like, yeah, go ahead and put that anywhere. Those things are harmless. I mean, what was the point? I'm sorry. I'm just pointing out the obvious.
I mean, the whole idea of Obi-Wan trying to solve that mystery is he just follows some people.
Exactly.
And then there's no other mystery is she talked to that guy, so now I'll just follow him, and then that's the end of it. Yes. There's no twist to the mystery. There's no real mystery. It's just that really didn't take much effort at all.
So there was this one line, a toss away line about something about your senses his senses being attuned to Padme. And Anakin bristles at this idea. And there was this kind of little thing of sexual jealousy. And then later on in episode 3, there's he comes and Obi-Wan comes to speak at Padme's apartment about his concerns about Anakin, blah, blah, blah. You know, the great and wise Jedi who can't pick up on the fact that, the chosen one is married and has conceived a child. I mean, she's standing around there with, bun in the oven. And, he never once says, I've known this, we've been through battles together. We've known each other. He never once says until the very, very end when it's so obvious that, because she's crying and Anakin has gone to the dark side. And it's oh, is the child Anakin's? Yeah, I'm so very sorry. It's oh, come on. You just figured it out now. But before then, Anakin seems very kind of angry that Obi-Wan has been at the apartment. And I know for a fact that there was, in some iteration of the script, Palpatine really cranked up the sexual jealousy aspect of that. And I think they backed off. It was part of his Palpatine's seduction of Anakin. This oh, I've heard a rumor that Padme has conceived a child of a Jedi, and it's you've been away a long time. That kind of trying to question the parentage, which I think would have been a fascinating subplot, but it also would have totally been outside the realm of what works. Maybe not what works in Star Wars, but what you can expect from Star Wars. You're not going to get that kind of idea. And maybe that's why he was well, I've already set it up. I could have a love triangle, but mean, Luke and Leia and Han, uncomfortable as it is with the end, knowing that we're talking about a brother and sister.
A brother and sister.
At least in the first movie and in the early part of Empire, it was done as a very, almost a slapstick kind of.
Well, it was slapstick, but it was also, they basically handled it like adults, right? And I know Luke is kind of this young farm boy, kind of, happy-go-lucky, kind of dopey, like, hey, she kissed me first. I thought she liked me. But in the same, like, it's sort of handled like, they kind of handle it more or less like adults. I mean, they handle it like adults in a 1950s serial.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you say there's this kind of like slapsticky aspect. It's sort of overplayed a little bit, but it's, they understand, Han and Luke kind of both understand that, they both are kind of into her, but then they just kind of deal with it and they move on.
Exactly. Yeah, and
they don't Luke doesn't like mope about it constantly. There's just the one line in A New Hope where he's asking Han, he's like, so what do you think? And she's like, still, she's got spirit, and Luke gets jealous then, but then that's the end of it.
I would say that, I hate to say this, but that's probably the most emotionally complex Star Wars ever gets, is that like that exchange.
Yeah.
That idea of, like I said, Lucas is not really good at like the whole concept of, Leia's draping a serape over like what's like, you've lost your entire culture, your entire planet, the history, everybody you've ever known is gone.
Yeah. I'm going to put my hands on your shoulder and then, I have something else I need to take care of. You're okay here though, right? Like you're good.
Exactly. Oh man.
We're good. Yeah. You're fine.
Yeah.
So, but I can't imagine Lucas wrote that himself. That has to be.
No.
Yeah.
There was Gloria Katz and Willard Hayek or whatever. Or did they work on the first one?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Because then Kasdan did most of the heavy lifting on the second one.
Exactly.
On Empire.
Yeah.
Or at least some of it, and then definitely most of it on Jedi. So we've to bring it a little back to what I had. So I was doing on the one hand, on the other hand, and so on the one hand, to refresh our listeners' memory, on the one hand, right, you have all of these websites sort of digging deep to try to break this mystery box or this wall of secrecy about the movies and try to say like, oh, we found this person was actually filming scenes for episode 8 with Mark Hamill, and this character might make an appearance, which leads me to then, on the other hand, the fact that they're keeping it so secret and that they're not, they meaning again Lucasfilm, Disney, whomever, right, that they're not giving us any information means that you're getting this kind of crazy speculation, and a lot of which is kind of dumb and ill-informed speculation, ill-informed in the sense that, like, well, all you have to do is think about the original trilogy movies for like 5 minutes, and then you remember, oh, right, this couldn't happen, or, there are reasons why not to think this is. And specifically here, I'm talking about this idea that Darth Vader is going to show up in some form or fashion in either episode 8 specifically or just the new sequel trilogy in general. Right. And there are some ways they could make that work, right? Hayden Christensen could be a Force ghost, and, whatever. But some of this was, like, oh, well, what if they clone Darth Vader? Or what if Kylo Ren clones him? And, then because he's obsessed with Darth Vader, right? Like that's the one of the two things we know about Kylo Ren is that he's obsessed with Darth Vader. He's a Darth Vader fanatic. So what if he finds out how to clone him somehow and bring him back to life or whatever? But it's like, well, then what is he going to do with him? Like, do you honestly think a clone Darth Vader is going to like listen to Kylo Ren, whoever Kylo Ren is? And maybe that's where the dramatic tension comes in, but that doesn't seem like a realistic thing to me.
It does seem just kind of outside the realm. It's funny because I was trying to, my wife hasn't really taken a big interest in these new movies aside from, what I've told her. So she hasn't gone out and looked. So she was trying to I think I brought this concept up to her, and she was just like, what? And then I was saying,
Right.
well, here's the thing. So the rumor is that this Kylo Ren character, who she didn't, when we were at the toy store, she didn't realize, like, who is this guy?
Right.
Kind of looks like Darth Vader. And I said, oh, he's obsessed with Vader. And she's like, he's obsessed with Vader? That's like his thing? I mean, that's the big push in this movie, that guy obsessed with Vader. It's like, it does seem kind of like there has to be more to
the bad guys in these movies are just, their main thing is that they were obsessed with the bad guys from the other movies.
Yeah, it's like this kind of weird combination of Glenn Close from Fatal Attraction and a parody of kind of fanboys.
Right.
Is this high concept diss of like guys that spend their entire, what they should be putting in a 401k on, like getting replicas of lightsabers and you know what I mean? It's this idea at the end where he's like, it's like, but you have no health care. No.
But I mean, one of the rumors, or I guess it was Entertainment Weekly, like was addressing this rumor, like, oh, here are 6 or 9 or whatever odd number is the right number for a slideshow. I don't know. The 9 ways it could work, and one of them was just like, oh, what if Vader wasn't really dead? Like, what if they just burned his suit, but he wasn't in it, or it was something like that. I was like, that can't be right. Like, he was a Force ghost at the end of Jedi. Like, he's dead. He is actually dead. Like, he is. It's not. And I mean, part of this is, the Abrams has said, like, oh, the sequel trilogy, like, you're gonna think about, it's gonna completely change the way that you view this original trilogy and the story of what happened. And it's like, well, I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be something that dramatic, is it?
I don't know. I mean, that might be, in some ways, I welcome it. I mean, I don't know. I might be here a couple months, a month later or a week later saying, this ain't my Star Wars. I don't know what J.J. Abrams thought he was doing, but this ain't my Star Wars. It's, I guess, I mean, it's incumbent when you're, you have to kind of reinvent when something like is so tied to characters, and those characters are played by actors, and those actors get older. You get in this weird thing where it's like, well, how do you reinvent this? It's like, well, you have to introduce new characters, but how do we get people to care about these because this is really the first time that, Lucas, he made us care about Qui-Gon Jinn by putting in, like, a well-liked actor. I don't know anybody who says, oh, I can't stand Liam Neeson. I mean, he does have a certain gravitas to him, even though now he plays angry, former alcoholic dad and everything. But, at the time he was considered, that's a lot of acting weight put there, even though his early roles were low budget type things. Right. But, you got Boyega and stuff, and they all seem great. But yeah, all it could take is, just an imbalance of humors or whatever in the movie to make you go like, yeah, he's a great actor, but I just didn't feel it. Or it's, they made it too much like the vernacular they gave him an attitude like, if Boyega plays this as a guy, kind of like, oh, a 23-year-old guy in 2015's way of reacting to things emotionally. If they don't touch into the idea that this is the recreation of the serial of the 30s and 40s. Right. It could easily misbalance, and then they have like, well, we have 3 movies behind these characters, and people are not attached to them like they are. Because I mean, Star Wars at the end of the day is character, because we're dealing with actors here who like are fighting for their artistic lives within these limited, like, emotional, like I said, it's like I can only point to certain emotional touchstones in these movies anyway. So it's really hard to act. It was hard to act. So they had to be casted to type and, their strengths. Yeah. I don't know. It's one of these things where you just kind of go, the tone could be just weird. If oh, we're going to change the way you think about it. Well, what if it's not what people want? I mean, I don't know what a 15-year-old kid. I mean, I don't even know what the it's hard to even know because everything is marketed to an age group. It's either, a lot of things are like, Pixar movies are always marketed to little kids and their parents. It's that thing where it's simultaneously two people like, it reminds me of when I was a kid, and the kids are like getting something new. And I think that's probably the only way that this thing could be artistically successful. I mean, financially, we know it's going to be the number one, movie for like a month or something like that,
Right. Well, and I mean, I was thinking, so how did they do this with the original trilogy, right? How did they make you care about these characters you had never seen before? And it was basically relying on the visuals and the way that the original trailers were edited, where you go like, wow, that's like, I've never seen something like this before. And the voiceover like played that up, that this is something you've never seen before. I mean, it's like a fairy tale with a princess and a farm boy, but setting it out in space with all these ships and these, dogfights, whatever, that was what was to hook you. Whereas now, it's like, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's impossible for J.J. Abrams or any director to show us sort of special effects specifically, or just in general, anything that we haven't seen before from a movie like this. But at the same time, I feel like the things that we haven't seen before, like, it's going to be an incremental move. It's not going to be this like huge, like, wow, I literally have never seen anything like this before, right? Whatever they show us now in terms of effects and visuals, right? We're going to have some kind of frame of reference.
Right.
We're going to have lots of frames of reference to like, oh, well, this, this kind of reminds me of the backgrounds of this, but it's the color's more saturated, or, I can't believe they finally perfected this technique of being able to create a huge crowd digitally. They finally perfected that technique that they've used in all of these other movies. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tricky thing that they have to balance with making you care about these new characters that, honestly, and again, with all the secrecy, we don't really know all that much about. And particularly Kylo Ren. Like, they've really kept him under wraps.
Yeah, I know.
In terms of, I guess we know his motivation, but I still am not sure why I should care. Exactly. That is his motivation.
It's like it's like he doesn't, he kind of, I'm not a huge fan of the design.
Yeah.
Just because there doesn't seem to be a lot to it.
The mask is fine.
I almost think that, to me, it would almost feel like if they had used, maybe we'll find out why this is inappropriate, but, I was back to my thing about looking at toys and really not seeing, you still can't find the 3-inch figures, as an aside. But what you did find was a glut of stuff from season 1 of Rebels, and it was all on discount. I could have gotten like a 2-foot tall Sith Inquisitor for $10. And like,
I've seen a lot of Inquisitor stuff, which is odd because he's dead now.
I mean, that's a great design. And it's like, to me, like, if you had shown that guy, I would have been, I don't know, I think a little bit of me is like, man, that would have been he's kind of scary. I mean, when Darth Maul first appears in episode 1 in that hologram and he kind of pops up behind, it's like, he seems really, and he's like, it's like, what is this guy? Is he, he's vicious.
Right.
He's like,
right. Again, it's something that you actually have not seen before.
Yeah. He's an animal or whatever. And if Kylo Ren is this guy, and it's like, I assume we see his face.
He's just a guy with a neutral sounding voice.
Yeah. Oh, please.
We have to stop the resistance and find the last Jedi.
Oh, man. I just, every time I think of Kylo Ren, I just think I've seen this guy like laying on a dirty mattress in his underpants way too long to be afraid of him.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, kid. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I don't know. I shouldn't be like...
No, but I mean, but that is interesting because I was thinking now, just as you said that, I think Rebels sort of might have stolen the film's thunder a little bit, not because the films necessarily were going to go in this direction, but I think having something like an Inquisitor for the First Order would have been it at least would have been an idea that people could have gone, oh, okay, I get it. I see what they're doing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion.
Like, yeah, that is an interesting idea. Whereas now they're like, so there's this First Order, and then there's this guy. But then there's this other group called the Knights of Ren, and they're not Sith, but they're Dark Lords in some way, or they're dark side affiliated. And and maybe the movie, they can explain it in like two sentences, and people will say, oh, I get it, or they just won't care. But I feel like if they had phrased it more as like, oh, these are like sort of inquisitors that the First Order hired or retained in order to, wreak havoc on the galaxy, then that people would have been like, oh, okay, that's a good idea, and that's a smart, that's an interesting kind of element to the conflict. Whereas since Rebels already took it, they're like, well, we got to find, what about these Knights of Ren?
Yeah. Yeah, so, it's the idea that, I mean, I guess you could say, well, Episode 4 had the concept of the military with Tarkin and his round table of Moffs versus the spiritual concept of Vader, who yes was being reined in by Tarkin, but was you can understand in that with his Mahdi and was it Mahdi or Tag? I forget. Who does he choke?
They're the same person.
The person he chokes is
Taggy
or something like that. And just the idea that yes, they adhere to a militaristic structure, but they have spiritual concerns. You know what I mean? So maybe they're trying to invoke that a little bit. The idea that, well, when push comes to shove, if any of these guys in this table get between, what me and the Emperor are trying to do, we'll just kill them. It doesn't matter.
Well, and they use it as a weapon, right?
Right.
That it's another, and Tarkin went along with it because he has this whole doctrine of using fear and instilling fear in order to keep the regions in line and the different systems in line. And so using this kind of like mystical dark side of the Force was one way of doing that.
True.
So can I hit you with my revelation from today?
Yeah. Let's hear some revelations.
So we know that Kylo Ren is obsessed with Darth Vader, and we can assume he's in search of the Last Jedi, as we know from the toy. Darth Vader's lightsaber is getting passed around, or Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber is getting passed around. Right. So there's this idea of kind of like relics, and it comes up in Aftermath as well. This idea of, relics that may or may not be, Darth Vader's real glove.
Wait, hold on.
You
broke up right there. You broke up.
Okay.
You said
I broke up. Hello. Am I? Are you receiving?
Yeah, you're here. It just said Darth Vader's something, and then
Darth Vader's glove. It's not his glove. It's his lightsaber. But yeah, this idea that with Darth Vader dead, there's now all this interest in kind of relics of his time, his body, his mystery.
Yes.
So combining that with what we know of Kylo Ren, I had this revelation that I think what they're doing, if we're taking these rumors as having some element of truth in them, they're remaking They Saved Hitler's Brain. What do you think of that? It's they saved Vader's brain, right? Because we know that the First Order are these they're basically like the Nazis in South America. That's J.J. Abrams explicitly said that. Kylo Ren, we think, is now on the lookout for some way of rekindling that Vader spirit. Why not do it? You get a scientist, or you get maybe even Luke Skywalker himself. And if he's not good enough, then maybe you try to get Leia, Organa Skywalker, or whatever, to find some way to save Vader's brain. What do you think?
No, I don't think I've ever seen that movie, but I'm aware.
Oh, I haven't either. But
I'm aware of it.
No, like it's such
that's not a crazy concept, really, because it's the whole idea.
No, as soon as I thought of it, it was like, oh, there actually might be some truth to that.
You know, like Kylo Ren doesn't have any force powers and all this concept, and like, oh well, Kylo Ren is the sacrifice, and we're going to use once we capture either Luke. And we will have the blood, and then, his connection to the Force Ghost, because he can see the Force Ghosts. Because I don't know if bad guys can see the ghosts. There was some idea that in Jedi they were going to come up with this idea that Vader and Yoda that Obi-Wan and Yoda were going to appear as ghosts to destabilize the battle between the Emperor and stuff like that. But they decided not to do that. So we don't even know if everybody can see it. So it's this idea like, oh, it's like a little bit like They Saved Hitler's Brain and Ghostbusters, where they're like, Kylo Ren is the host body and Luke is the catalyst, and they're trying to bring Vader back so they can have it inhabit Kylo Ren's body and bring him back, because it's the whole idea. The I don't know what they were called. What were they called in Aftermath when they bought that lightsaber? And their whole intent was that they were going to destroy it and give it back. To Vader.
I don't remember the name of them. They were like Seekers of the Way, or it was something. It was something kind of bland and non-specific like that.
And it's the whole concept. Like people go, oh well, he was redeemed at the end, but then they're like, well, maybe they can. Maybe the concept of the Darth Vader as being a separate entity from Anakin, even though they've spent a lot of time in a lot of books and a lot of cartoons trying to hammer the fact that this is Anakin Skywalker, and Ahsoka Tano can sense him and blah blah blah, and Luke can sense him, so there's not a concept of the good and the bad being separated. So I mean, it would kind of go against what they're trying to do, but I mean, it's actually it's very possible that they are kind of doing $150 million remake of They Saved Hitler's Brain.
Right, stretched across 3 movies now. They're not gonna blow their wad in the first one, right? They got other characters they got to deal with. You gotta have the Millennium Falcon in there. You need to give Oscar Isaac something to do. But yeah, I think, that idea of resurrecting in some capacity, Darth Vader and the dark side, right? I think it sounds like that's where they're moving towards.
Yeah. I mean,
why not reach for They Saved Hitler's Brain?
I mean, they're doing 3 movies. I mean, if they're following that structure, which they didn't do very well in the prequels, where they didn't really create a proper cliffhanger, like people. Like
now the war started.
Now there's a war,
and then 6 years, and then the next movie. Well, the war's almost over.
Exactly. It's and if they're trying to go that way, or they're saying they're also conventional wisdom would say like, we don't want to mess with that again, because if you don't do it right. Because, like I said, well, we've talked about on this show today, is that there's this rumbling in the background that there's going to be some big reveal in this movie that's going to change how we view the movies. And wouldn't that be more, if we were following the ring theory of Star Wars, wouldn't that be better suited for Episode 8? So either we're getting this reveal, and it's going to change our nature of how we view Star Wars, and it goes forward, or it was a MacGuffin, and they're just going to push this all, and then it's going to happen in 8. This idea that someone's going to be in peril. But I mean, I think at this point it's been done so much that to put somebody in peril, in where you can't honestly know where it's going to go, like i.e. the carbonite, i.e. the Luke missing a hand and finding out Darth Vader. I just don't think that they could actually top that.
Yeah.
If anything, it would seem ridiculous.
I don't know that they necessarily have to top it, though. And I think they realize that they're probably not going to top it. But they can try to find ways to get that same feeling. Again, that what we've been talking about is this episode. That same feeling of like those old serials. You know, they recycled stuff like that all the time, and so you know those kinds of plot devices and things, and so I think they're smart enough to know, like, look, you know, for a large portion of the fan base, we're not going to top, you know, freezing Han Solo in carbonite as a cliffhanger, but you know, we can do something that captures that feeling, and then for all of these younger fans, still provide them something that has a similar emotional effect. So yeah, I mean, we could very well see something, you know, not freezing in carbonite, but that kind of that level of a cliffhanger at some point.
Yeah. You think there'll be carbonite in the new movies?
I mean, I wonder about that, because
didn't they do that on
this happens in the books. This happens in the books too, where I feel like everyone just wants to invent a new planet or planets, right? And so in episode 7, we're getting Jakku, you know, so a second desert planet, and we're getting whatever winter mountain planet that Starkiller Base is on, which is interesting. They haven't really. I don't think they've revealed what the name of that planet. They just keep referring to Starkiller Base.
No, yeah, they haven't. But I think we figured out that it's at least that they're in some kind of mountainous area and it has vegetation, so it's not Hoth, you know. Right.
And it's interesting because it also looked to me a bit like what Alderaan looked like in episode 3.
Yeah.
But I mean, it clearly can't be Alderaan. But you know, that similar kind of, and that's perfectly fine, because we've talked about this too. It's been a while, but I think it's perfectly fine to have more than one desert planet in your galaxy, or have more than one, you know, snowy mountain planet in your galaxy. That's perfectly fine too. But this idea that everyone has to invent their own new planet with its own unique ecosystem and climate and everything, is like, why not? Why not go back to Bespin, and why not go back to Cloud City, or one of the other planets that they've, you know, one of the 150 planets that they visited in the prequel trilogy, you know, where Obi-Wan went to like 20 different places. Why not go back to Utapau? Why not go back to Mustafar? You know, and so I can't remember where I was going with this. Oh, but just the idea that, it's I don't know. I mean, and we're getting a little bit of that potentially in Rogue One, that the rumor is that they'll be on Yavin 4, where the Rebel base was. But I actually wonder if they'll be on Dantooine, which is where Leia told Tarkin the Rebel base was. But then they showed up and they had left a long time ago. So I wonder if there's going to be sort of a scene in Rogue One where they have to evacuate Dantooine, and you know, this group going off to steal their Death Star plans is like, okay, they're leaving, and we know if anything happens to them, everyone else needs to get out, because they'll find us. That's kind of my guess, that they actually might be on Dantooine for part of it.
For part of Rogue One.
For part of Rogue One, yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I like that idea, because I mean, I think that the locus of these anthology movies, or whatever they're calling, a Star Wars story movies, are going to be, I think it's like their way of trying to, you know, have their cake and eat it too. It's like, oh, well, we're pushing forward, but we're also we're literally doing 3 movies of fan service, like major fan service. Yeah. It's like, even if you hate episode 7, you're going to be like, you know, 6 months later or a year later, you're going to be able to go in and, like, you know, see something that.
Well, but I still like Boba Fett, so I'll go see the Boba Fett movie.
Exactly.
Or, you know, if that ever ends up actually happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I
no,
know,
you're
I
right.
haven't heard anything about that third movie.
Yeah.
It's like no rumors, no nothing. I mean, they have to be getting into production. I mean, I assume all these movies are going to be out by 2020, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, unless Boba Fett keeps getting delayed, but I think that was initially scheduled for 2019.
Oh, see. I mean, I don't know how much,
or maybe 2020. I can't remember what. No, I think 2019 was episode 9.
So the third anthology movie is a clip show.
Yeah,
it's just like,
so it's come to this.
Oh boy. Hi, everybody. You might know me from episode 8. And remember that? Remember when our heroes got into that trash compactor? I think it went a little something like this.
You'll just have the Muppets co-host it now that the Muppets are back.
Oh, jeez. Don't.
I actually thought of that today because there's an ad. I can't remember what newspaper, but there's an ad about Battle of the Network Stars, and it's Kermit going up against the NCIS guy, Mark Harmon, I guess.
Jeez.
Right, but I mean, they are bringing back the Muppets and Star Wars together at the perfect point because that the original Muppet Show. Some of the most iconic moments from that show, I would probably argue, are Mark Hamill being on it and Carrie Fisher being on it, right? At least when people think about that show, that's one of the big memories that a lot of people have of that show, or at least of the guest stars.
I don't remember Carrie Fisher being on it.
Wasn't she on it?
I do. I mean, I have the Mark Hamill.
Oh, Mark Hamill, certainly.
I have that on DVD. I bought just that special one where they put it was just that one, but you'd think
I guess maybe it was just Mark Hamill. So one of the iconic moments was not actually true, but Mark Hamill certainly, or at least, and they did a whole big Star Wars, series of sketches about Star Wars and all the parodies and everything. So those two were linked there for a brief point in time, and so I have to imagine, since Disney's in charge of them both, that we'll see Miss Piggy dressed up as Captain Phasma or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's the thing that kind of gives me trepidation, because I've already I've heard some bad reviews of this new Muppets thing, and also part of me is very turned off that they're I have to hear about their divorce. It's
they're going on Jimmy Kimmel to work out their
it's like he's got a girlfriend, and they're dating, and it's I guess maybe I'm the one that's uncomfortable with this level of sexuality, especially when it comes to pigs and frogs.
Why do you have such a problem with puppet love, Robert?
It's just that was not, I grew up as a child of the 70s and 80s that, my Kermit the Frog, my Miss Piggy, they were in a codependent, abusive relationship. And I don't really need, it was a metaphor for, anyway, I'm starting to do a bit that's not funny. But no, anyway, go ahead.
So since we're talking about sort of trying to recapture this feeling of the original trilogy and marketing it and how maybe they might try to mirror parts of it, it sounds like we may see the original theatrical cuts of the original trilogy again in some form or fashion. There were multiple, again, this is a week for rumors and not much news, but there are multiple rumors that either the original theatrical cuts will be released to Blu-ray, or they might end up on Netflix as part of the deal that Disney is working out with them, or that, I don't know, they might get released in the theaters again. That basically, Lucas said, no, the special editions, the versions that he put out are the ones those are the real versions, and the original theatrical versions, those aren't the real movies anymore. So that might actually, Disney might go back on that idea. So what say you, Robert?
Well, I mean, it's hard because they've been teasing this forever, and when it finally, and when they first did it on DVD, it was such an afterthought that it was almost insulting. I mean, I respect that Lucas's concept that he wanted to, Tolkien rewrote the Gollum interaction when he did Lord of the Rings to kind of, he went back and fixed The Hobbit to make it, dovetail in it more appropriately. I mean, artists have always done that kind of concept. I mean, a lot of big books have been revised over time. It's, movies have been
and
done.
Sure, the creator, him as the creator, he should have some say as to what version he thinks is definitive, and the version that he is most comfortable and is closest to what he wanted to do.
Yeah, but
all of that is fine and good in the abstract.
Yes, but also those movies, at least, especially Star Wars, as it was known for the first year or two. I mean, these are culturally significant works of art that, need to exist. I mean, it's like the idea that that movie was, what do they call it? It's whoever, they earmark something as a culturally important thing, and then they ask, like they do that with film. And Star Wars is one of them, but unfortunately you can't actually see it in the version that they, quote, consider to be cultural. I mean, I sound like I'm rambling because I can't remember the organization that deemed Star Wars.
It was the Archives, wasn't it?
Yeah,
wasn't
it's like the National Archive. Yeah, the National Archives. And like a person can't go and see what I saw when I was, 4 years old at the drive-in. Right. Star Wars thing has had so many versions. I mean, there is the rough version sound mix of mono that was released. There was the 70 millimeter audio mix. I mean, if you take it as the holistic approach to Star Wars, that it's music, it's sound, it's acting, right, it's effects.
It's not so much acting, but
yeah, it's not so
everything
much,
else.
It's not so much acting. It's story.
It's certainly not the dialogue. He certainly, in terms of it being a holistic experience.
Yes,
he always said like, "Oh, the dialogue doesn't matter."
Exactly.
Or at least he did when the prequels came out.
I think it's important for people to be able to go back and say, "I want to see what it looked like when it came out in May of 1977, and I want to see what people were all." Now that might end with people saying, "Yeah, I went and I haven't seen that version." And it's kind of boring. It's kind of slow. It's like
right.
Everything looks cheap. I can see the matte lines. I mean, I don't blame Lucasfilm for not wanting to put that as their best foot forward.
Yeah.
But I mean, now that Disney's in, except for some very obvious examples, have had a pretty good track record with their, they're keeping their legacy, at least in the quote, the Disney vault, bringing it out, their sense of history. I mean, I don't know if they change a lot of movies and when they re-release. I know that there's been some minor edits to like Roger Rabbit's not a Disney movie. Sorry. I know. I was like, I'm not super familiar.
It's close enough.
Yeah, there's characters in there. I've always thought it would be that Star Wars, the original trilogy, would be really awesome in some kind of prestigious box set, with all the vintage documentaries that came, because they did some of that on the Blu-ray. There was, from Star Wars to Jedi. Actually, I don't know if that's actually on the Blu-ray or not, but there was a making of. They basically did one for every movie. Like a short documentary, and you can find them online. Something like that. Maybe every cut, maybe having like, I don't know, maybe not every cut. I know that just everything before the special edition. I mean, it's like, you can watch it with A New Hope added. You can watch it with the original mono mix where, Shelley Frazier's as Aunt Beru has a different voice. You can watch it with C-3PO's alternate dialogue when he explains the map. I mean, I don't think technologically it can't be that hard to do, It's like they could do 77, they could do the 78, the 79, the 3 versions of it, or a couple alternate audio mixes or whatever. I mean, on my computer I have a high quality version of the mono mix that was on. I found it in an old hard drive because people use it a lot for when they do their fan edits. They try to come up with we call it the 77 edit, or there was one that they did the 16 millimeter roadshow, or there's even they'd never do this, but sometimes you can actually find alternate versions in the Super 8 versions of the movie. There's different dialogue for Empire if you watch. If they did that in a prestigious thing that was kind of marketed to not I don't know if collecting is the appropriate term, but people that like old farts like me, that just want to have it in a digital archive format, it's scanned at 4K, because obviously in a few years 4K TVs are going to be all the rage again, so they're going to have to release it again. But just something that like they did, like we've talked about this before. Blade Runner, the Blade Runner box set that is currently out of print, comes with 5 cuts of the film. There's there's the final cut. There's the original theatrical. There's
the international version.
Then there's the director's
There's
cut.
the director's cut, and then there's the work print.
And I don't go and I watch them all, but I like having them. I like the idea of, as a person who enjoys reading about movies, probably more than, quote, film. I probably enjoy reading about movies. It's kind of fun to be able to would be fun to easily go back. And, like when my nieces, when we had Star Wars, when they first saw Star Wars, I brought out the VHS. Now that was mainly because that was, I was at my mom's house and she still has a VCR and I still have copies. So it was expedient, because later on, when we tried to watch Empire in the aborted Empire viewing, I just grabbed my Blu-rays because I thought, oh, well, this is the closest I have. I have a big TV in the basement. This will be the closest to having a cinematic experience. Blah blah blah. So it's not the thing where I'm like, oh, but the only problem is Lucas changes stuff for every video release. Like there's no consistency. It's like, the first when Phantom Menace was released on VHS, it was the same movie you saw in theaters. When Phantom Menace was released on DVD, there was extra sequences in it. There was a extra lap of the pod race. There was a conversation about getting in a shuttle on Coruscant. They edited some kind of silliness with the way that some of the way that lines were read with Natalie Portman. So the second Attack of the Clones didn't have as many changes, and I think they maybe toned down the way the Vader no at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Right. But I mean, like, even the originals, like, one version has Clive Reville doing the Emperor, but Luke, they reuse
Ian McDiarmid. They dubbed him in.
Ian McDiarmid's scream when Luke falls down the thing, which then they subsequently, when they did the Blu-ray, they took it out. So it's this idea that it's like it never. I mean, like he had that old line. It's like films are never finished; they're just abandoned. But sometimes he would literally. It was like watching someone at a mixing board. Like, oh, let's have more bass. Yeah. Oh no, this time let's have more snare drum.
Right. I mean, and that happened with the prequel trilogy too, right? Like even between the time they were released in theaters and then they came out on DVD, he had tweaked them a little bit, and it did fiddle with the sound mix or added a scene here or cut something there, just like slightly, not even like a major thing, but he, I just want to shave half a second off. Yeah. So it's, I mean, the Blade Runner set was what I thought of as well. And, it would be nice to have, you could have the original theatrical version, the special edition, and then whatever, quote unquote definitive edition that Lucas, the last version that Lucas put out. And it with Disney too, it makes sense because I don't know if they still do this. I assume they still do this, but for a while, you would only be able to get certain you'd only be able to find certain movies in the stores, and then they would come out with these ads of like, oh, you could, for the first time in 20 years, you can find Lady and the Tramp on VHS. Buy it now before it goes back in the vault. And so they would release these movies out on VHS and then DVD for just a limited period of time, and then kind of take them out of the stores in order to drive up demand, I guess. I'm not really sure why they did that.
Yeah, I honestly think that's. I mean, they did it to create, false scarcity. Demand. They don't want people to take it for granted.
Right. And so it seems to me, given that, I mean, this is sort of a cynical view of it, but it seems like Disney then would be the perfect company to do that with these Star Wars movies, where, you know, you release them for a limited period of time, say like, oh, these are only going to be out for 6 months, and then they're going back in the vault. So get them while you can, and they can charge a ton of money for them, and not even have to do that much. I mean, now with the issue too is, I think, is they would probably want to. I mean, they could sell them separately, but they would also probably bundle them all together, just because I guess no one likes the embarrassment of having everyone buy the original trilogy and no one buying the prequels, or at least very few people buy the prequels. But there is the issue that Fox still has the home distribution rights to these, so Disney either has to work out a deal with Fox where they get a cut of it, or I guess they go to court over it. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty rock solid.
Yeah. Now the fact that this is coming out, and you know, this was John Landis of all people saying like, "Oh yeah, I talked to George Lucas," and you know, I can't imagine he has any real solid information. I think this is just like, oh, wouldn't it be nice now that George Lucas isn't in charge of it anymore to see these out?
Yeah, I mean, he's relating a story he's relating a conversation that Lucas had. I mean, Lucas is totally out of the loop probably on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the streaming I could see happen maybe, but even then, because then you probably still have to deal with Fox, but it's a little less tricky. But then you release the original theatrical versions, but then what do you do with the special editions? Like, do you put those on streaming as well and just let people pick between the two of them, or do you only put original trilogy out for a brief period and then you switch them with the special editions? Like, I'm not really sure how that would work, just from, you know, that standpoint. Not logistics isn't the right word, but from practical.
I honestly can't imagine any of this transpiring in 2015. I mean, they've already announced that they're doing those ugly steel books, a re-release of the Blu-rays.
Right. No, I mean, if this happens, I think it would be a while before it happened.
I mean, they already found the pages on Netflix. That was people were like, the whole Netflix rumor is actually based on fact that they found somebody was looking through the whatever they call it, the API or something. It's something I don't know. Right. I don't understand how that stuff works. It was. I think it's something similar to how there used to be a website that was really. They actually would, because the way Netflix would provide information, you could actually look ahead. And there was a site I used to go to, and they would tell you what was coming, which is not something that Netflix generally does, except for their own original programming. They tend to just go, oh, you know, it's the first, where, you know, now you can look at this, you can watch The Sandlot. They'll tell you what's leaving, but they don't tell you what's coming generally. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd really want to inundate people with like, oh, you know, we just released these digitally and we're charging $100 for that. And then, oh, you know, now you can buy them unaltered, which, you know, a lot of people probably bought that trilogy thinking, well, I've never owned Star Wars because they've never done them right, but, you know, now I've got kids, let me just get them. I'll just buy them on iTunes, and I'll have to deal with a disc, and no, I'm mad that it doesn't have the original cuts, but whatever. But, you know, the thing with Fox is weird because, yeah, I mean, they own that first movie in perpetuity, and the second and the third one only till 2020. I think is how it works. But even then, it's a distribution deal, so it has it like if you buy the whole set on iTunes and you have the Disney Anywhere app, which is their movie streaming digital copy app, they actually provide you with, like, not Ultraviolet, but a secondary like Vudu, which is a company owned by Walmart. Because they're two. I kind of was really soft on this digital copy stuff until I got an iPad, and then be like, it's great to have access to movies when you travel. So I have Vudu because not everything you get an Apple copy. I have Apple, and then if you bought Star Wars through Apple, you only got 5 of the movies. You didn't get A New Hope on Vudu. You only got it on iTunes. It's this kind of weird thing because the way Fox licenses their stuff, and since it's not a Disney distributed film, and of course now everything I haven't watched them digitally, so I don't know if A New Hope has the 20th Century Fox fanfare, and then everything else has the new Disney fanfare, which is kind of like this weird edit.
Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about that either. That's a good point. I hadn't even thought about the fanfare aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, they, like I said, they changed it for the digital. I saw somebody put it up on YouTube, and yeah, it's kind of jarring. But I mean, that's why I feel like having the original cuts, it's like, I remember, it always reminds, because it becomes like, Star Wars is a sound and a visual experience, and it was hammered in my head a certain way, and now seeing prequels, it always feels jarring. Even, because, I remember being in the theater for the special edition at the Cinerama, which is the high-end theater here in Seattle, owned by Paul Allen. And when you were going for the special edition, it was a whole night thing. You'd come in, you had to wait in line, you get the thing, and then they would play the Star Wars soundtrack to kind of get people excited. And then I remember one time I was sitting there getting ready, and they're playing the music that's the Alderaan, like the getting ready for Tarkin to use the Death Star against Alderaan. And there's that, we hit a certain beat of the music is when that subharmonic sound comes when one of the Death Star guys, he turns a switch and it's getting ready to fire. And all of a sudden there's a guy in the audience just goes, and it was like everybody laughed because we all knew it as a rhythm. I mean, from worn out VHS tapes. Now Star Wars to me doesn't have that rhythm anymore because of, for a few years, the special, when Han Solo goes, yes, I bet you have. Then he cuts the special edition, they cut the yes out. And then it loses its rhythm. So it's like watching your favorite band play your favorite song and they decide to, change the key in the middle of the song. And you're just like, well, what's going on here?
I mean, I really wonder if we, over time, have sort of overrated Lucas as an editor. In multiple senses of that word, and an editor in the sense of knowing what not to put in, sort of, the discretion piece of it, and knowing that, like, all right, you know what, this is maybe not done, and it's not exactly what I want from it, but it works, and it makes everything else hold together well. And then also an editor in terms of, like, what you were just alluding to, like getting the rhythm of these movies right, because the rhythm of those prequels is awful. Like, they're so slow and drawn out, and by the time you get to like the big set pieces, that the pod race in episode 1, it's it's fast and it's exciting, but you've been sitting there like listening to people talk for 20 minutes, and it's in this kind of like slow way that you don't feel that energy anymore. And so, I mean, I wonder how much credit for being a good editor we should really give to like all of the other people who were editing the original trilogy movies, and maybe it's just that he hadn't done it in a long time, and so he just lost it.
I don't know. I mean, Lucas had earlier in his career had made a name for himself because of his editing.
Yeah,
but I mean, Paul Hirsch and his ex-wife Marsha Lucas and I forget who the last guy was.
There's a guy who worked with David Lynch a lot who edited for Dwayne Dunham. He cut some of, I know he edited bits of Jedi. I don't know if he also worked on Empire Strikes Back. I can't remember.
I mean, I mean, I'm a firm believer in the idea that limitation is kind of like, it's the missing ingredient in a lot of situations. I mean, for certain artists. Mm-hmm. Certain artists, it's like, oh, well, all I had, some people will say like, oh, Bruce Springsteen's best album is Nebraska because he had a 4-track cassette recorder and an acoustic guitar. And he couldn't say, oh, let's have a big sax thing. And some people stand by that's his best record because he was super limited. And, Lucas is like, he was super limited by time. And I mean, he had this expansive idea that were very much on the level of what the prequels were when he first, the impetus. But, he had $8 million, which ballooned to 11, I think, by the time it was in. And they were literally saying to him, like, you can have your cantina scene, but you need to just buy off the wall masks. You need to go to Rick Baker and just go, I'll take whatever somebody didn't pick up. That's why you got a wolf man in the middle of the cantina.
Right.
And, which I love the wolf man, but I think he's got a whole name and stuff, but he's not in the new ones. I mean, you can see I'm sure he does. You can see the limitations right on the thing. But by the time, like, say, even the indicators of Jedi, his, he had it's all his money, but he has, basically everything, all of his ducks are in the row. That was probably for him was the funnest because he didn't get stressed out because Marquand didn't go over budget and he didn't have to fight with him. Oh, did he go over budget too?
That's not necessarily true because that was right when his divorce was happening.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm totally,
there were elements of it that were not very fun.
Totally forgetting that. Totally misspeaking.
But
I
mean, if you read, or I should say, and if you read that the Rensselaer book about the making of Return of the Jedi, I mean, he doesn't say it in so many words, but he provides enough evidence that as a reader, if you're paying attention, it's not that hard to connect the dots. But I mean, he makes the case essentially that Marcia Lucas really was the one who knew how to edit, particularly the emotional scenes together, not just love scenes, but anything that required, the viewer to feel something for the characters. Like, she was the one who edited those scenes, and she did a really good job at it. And so with her now no longer working on these movies, when the prequel comes along, Lucas doesn't really know how to do that himself. And I don't know that there's anyone else that he was tapping to edit these movies who did either.
Yeah. I mean,
right. He can edit the action sequences well enough. But it's those other parts of the movie that you have to stick in between the action sequences that I think he doesn't. He just, like you said, maybe it's because he's not comfortable with those kind of displays of naked emotion, or he just doesn't. It just doesn't register on some level.
Yeah, I mean, even it's like the editing. It's like, and I'm no expert on editing. I mean, it's kind of a it's a magical art because it's like you hear these stories like, oh, when we did Star Wars, we literally had we had less than 2 seconds of film after the one we cut. It's like everything was about cutting. We had almost no footage to cut. But
around, yeah.
But then at the end, I noticed this just even being kind of a lay person. If you like, one of my things about like watching Return of the Jedi is like one of the one of the worst scenes in the entire trilogy is the interaction between Han and Lando before they go their separate ways. Yeah, there's this weird kind of like back and forth that just feels like you don't feel connected to them. You don't actually think these guys are connected. And then all of a sudden at the end, Lando's just standing there.
Right.
And he just kind of wanders off because the Falcon is a matte painting. And it's just like every time I watch it, I go, oh, just painful. And I know that the original intention of the script is that Lando was going to buy it, trying to blow up the Death Star, and the Falcon was going to get destroyed. So there's all this gravitas about the idea like, oh, well, this is the last time that they're going to be together. And, and Lando standing there is not Lando standing there because somebody didn't cut. It's because this idea that, oh, well, he's getting a sense. Like he gets a weird feeling and he looks at the Falcon, and then Han gets on the shuttle and says something about he's getting a weird feeling, so they both get this weird feeling, but they decided not to go through with it, so that is kind of like the stems and seeds left over of that concept that Lando is going to die. But the fact is that he probably should have cut away a little bit sooner because it just seems really awkward.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they had their own problems even then, but it's, did Ben Burt, he did most of the prequels, right?
Yeah. I don't know if he was the only editor, but he he was one of the main editors on those movies.
He's not, he's not a guy you hear about being a great editor for other movies now.
Right. I mean, he's certainly a sound designer. He's very, very, very good. He came up with some really innovative stuff. But yeah, as just a film editor, I don't know. And especially because he was also, working with digital technology for the first time. So how much of it was, him sort of learning on the job? I don't know.
Yeah. So are we kind of done talking about that? Are we gonna?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of move back to some bits because we're talking about rumors.
Yeah,
and
let's
stuff
do
like
it.
That. So
let's do it.
I mean, did we really cover the Hayden rumor that much? I mean, I know we've kind of, in theory.
I think I briefly alluded to it that. Right. So one of these rumors about Darth Vader being in the newer movies is that Hayden Christensen himself might be in them, which we had said he's not, that's never going to happen. Why would he do that?
Of course, because
why would they get him? But now it sounds like, I mean, I think the specificity of it came in with there's on the props list, they had multiple versions of at least the Darth Vader chest plate with the buttons and everything.
Oh, really? I didn't even see that part.
Yeah, that's what I read in connection to this Hayden Christensen rumor. And so I alluded to it saying, yeah, maybe if he was a Force ghost, that would work, but I don't know how else you'd do it, really. I thought of another way, but I'm curious to see what you think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I almost think it's going to be one of the concepts that was kind of came from the EU that never really got its due, even though it shows up in the comics, is the idea of the holocron.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of, it's basically like a information storage cube, and there was some kind of, I think Luke stumbles across one not stumbles across one, but in issue 9 of Star Wars, there's a subplot about Luke using the Force to open a holocron. So we know that it's still something that they refer to. And that would have holograms of Jedi Masters talking. So it could easily be a situation where all it is episode 8, Finn, let's say Finn or Rey or whoever's going to be the Jedi, is this, they're training. So we never really ever get into except for a couple shots of, kids with practice lightsabers. We never really get into the concept of what they're learning. So maybe they're just filming him in a thing where, this is the story of Darth, this is, the story of Darth Vader becomes a warning to the Jedi when they get to that crucial point when they're powerful, yet they're still adhering to their old ways of before they were Jedi, of desire and want and connection to people romantically. And it's let me tell you the story of my father. There's the story of Darth Vader, and then they cut to this thing where thing of this hologram of this is my father and this is what happened, blah blah blah. I mean, it could be something as simple as that. It's or the idea that he could come back as a Force ghost, and they're going to recycle this concept that didn't get used in Jedi about they come in back to the corporeal world and they impart wisdom. But I mean, I don't.
Right.
But the only thing that throws me off of that is that, they're talking about that he's being trained. Oh, he's getting trained. So I don't know. Maybe what did he put on 15 pounds or something, or is he not? I know he would. He was supposed to be super ripped in episode 3 because he was working out. He put on all this muscle and stuff like that.
Right.
So who knows? I mean, I know him and his partner had a kid a couple years ago, and so maybe he's just been he hasn't been in a lot.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. It's kind of like people are like, what happened to him? It's like his career kind of took a tank. I wouldn't say that because it's, it's hard working in Hollywood, especially when you're attached to such a big movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess
but something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. That's all I had.
No, but something you said was the other idea that I just mentioned, which is this idea of him showing up in sort of a holocron way, not even as a Force ghost, but again, going back to this idea of relics and, there's Darth Vader's lightsaber or Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber is getting passed around. I mean, maybe it's possible that at one point he recorded one or a series of holocrons of him, imparting wisdom of either good or evil. And so they need him to do those, which I think would be interesting because we've seen, I guess the holocron, did those show up in any of the prequel movies, or is that purely like an EU thing that is canon now? I mean, because I know
not
they
directly.
showed up
There's that weird thing that there's when he's at the Jedi library, he pulls out some kind of thing he goofs with, and they kind of show this idea that the hologrammatic learning is that's a kind of the cornerstone of their stuff. But the holocrons are only ever shown in Dark Empire is the first time that the holocron is shown. Right. And so Clone Wars, I assume, had them. I can't remember if it did, but Rebels has had them. Okay.
And now at least several of them showed up in the latest issue of Star Wars number 9. So they're in the canon now. So it's possible then that we could see these show up in the movies and have this Darth Vader kind of guiding, or Anakin Skywalker guiding Kylo Ren from beyond the grave in some fashion, and that could be interesting. But again, like you said, like at what point is that making me rethink or look at the original trilogy in a new way? And at what point is that just like, oh, this is just a plot device, and this is just like Luke talking to Obi-Wan?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like you kind of, or it could just this whole thing could just be a kind of a miss. I mean, I've already found myself confused as to like, Luke is being, Skellig Michael because he's only doing something, something they're changing episode 7 when we find out, oh no, he's working on 7 and maybe 8. This might be a situation where this is Rogue One stuff. And, why not have Hayden come back and play let's keep some continuity. Let's not have some guy, throwing the suit on. Because, they did that. They've done that sometimes. If you want to have some kind of my brain is farting out on me. Just the connection, the continuity of the idea, like, they didn't have to have Hayden in the suit, but he kind of like asked Lucas, like, can we put me in the suit? Because I think it would be important to the thing. And he's a physically fit guy, and they could put him in the suit. And if there's a thing where it's like he's throwing people across the room with the Force and stuff like that, you're gonna want to see a physical, he'll be playing a 50-year-old man or whatever, or a 45-year-old man, playing. But it's like I think that would. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't think he's like Jake Lloyd, where he just goes, I hate Star Wars and I don't want to talk about it. Kind of situation. I don't think I've heard much of Hayden Christensen ever talk about Star Wars post being in it. I mean, I know he's been in movies with Samuel L. Jackson again, so it's kind of it can't be a horrible thing. But I know he doesn't do conventions. I think that's kind of, but that might also be partly by design. Maybe he wanted to go, and they're just like, no, we're not going to have you come because we don't want to tip our thing to think that you're going to be appearing in these movies. We want it to be a surprise or something like that. So, at this point in 2015, it's really hard when it's a rumor of geography, like, oh, somebody is going to be being this place. It's hard to kind of brush those off and say, oh no, that's not happening. I think that he's going to have some part in some of these movies. I just can't honestly say, for sure that it's going to be the new trilogy, because it doesn't seem to make sense. The only other thing is, and this is a more speculation on my part, and I kind of read that interview. There's some interview going around with Gwendoline Christie about her Captain Phasma, and I kind of get got the feeling that we are not going to see her face in this. That she is talking about how, I think she was kind of talking about trying to act in a suit and that whole concept.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes perfect sense that, and she's got from the toy, at least, we have I got a pretty strong indication that, not that she's a robot, or maybe she is a robot. I don't know. But the idea that
maybe she is a robot.
I mean, that's the thing. It's Star Wars. It could be anything. It could be like, at the end, her head comes off and a metal skeleton comes out. You never know. So it's like, but I get this idea. She's kind of playing it, unemotional. She's she's the machine of the Empire, kind of, even if she's a human. I don't think you see her face. I mean, I think it's going to be one of those things where, how is she going to relate this idea other than her voice that she's a woman in this costume, or if that's even important to the story or whatever. I think I can't remember the exact wording, but I kind of got the feeling that it was like this. She had kind of related that it was a kind of an extra challenge in the way she portrayed it. And I get that. And to me, I read between the lines and the fact that you don't see your face kind of situation.
Right. Yeah. And there's been some speculation on Twitter as well, because I think in one of the figures it's out, her helmet is removable. Maybe, but I think you're right. The impression I'm getting
I haven't seen that one.
I just saw someone mention it right before we started recording, but I don't know.
Well, fucking Twitter.
Since I don't have the figure, I can't comment. But yeah, so I have the interview here that you're talking about where she says, it becomes about the way in which you hold your hand, the way in which you walk, where your weight lies, and what you want that to mean. How you give the character identity within that suit, within that uniform. She said, I had to focus on what my body was communicating and what exactly my voice is communicating. And so I think you're right. At least in episode 7, we're not going to see her. Now, I have to imagine by the time we get to episode 9, we're going to see her without a helmet on. Just because, they did that with Vader, right? We finally saw Vader without the mask in episode 6. So, and we saw a little bit in episode 8 too, the back of his head. Episode 5, oh boy.
I know. We're only gonna get older. We're only gonna mess this up.
It's Luke Saber's lightsaber all over again. I think you're right. We're not going to see her, but that also brings up. It makes me think of our conversation we were just having about Hayden Christensen and Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker, whatever he's playing. Which is, even if he is still in the suit, in the Darth Vader suit, it still makes some sense to have him play it rather than just an extra or a stuntman or whatever, because you do want that kind of physical acting, and he is not going to have the same physical presence that David Prowse did in the original trilogy, but he, from playing Anakin Skywalker for 2 movies, right, he sort of was able to shape what that character was like physically,
right,
a little bit more, and so you still want that embodied in the character, in even inside of the suit. So I think that's the element that does make sense to me if they're bringing him back to play Darth Vader and not Anakin.
Right. And just to follow up on that thing you said about Phasma, I did a quick search. I think what the person was referring to was the Lego Captain Phasma. When you take the helmet off, it's just a black Lego toy head, which is a good indicator that there's no face underneath there, or it's just. Maybe they're gonna show it, but they wanted to keep the surprise to the end, or it's going to be like a Vader thing where maybe she'll be in all 3, and then you won't see till the very end who she is, which we know what she looks like, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like a situation like Vader where they actually at the very end they had to throw in Sebastian Shaw. But that's going to be, it's one of those things. I bet they really wish that they hadn't done that, because every time they go back to that, it's like that guy doesn't look anything like any Jake Lloyd or Hayden Christensen at all. I mean, I wonder if they've done any tests with trying to digitally put his head back, Hayden Christensen's head back in there.
You're right.
Because you'd think that would be the first thing Lucas would be like, we got to change that. I mean, I know that there was rumors that he had actually been, like, people begged him because he was thinking about replacing Yoda in Empire and Jedi with a digital Yoda.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were like, people were literally saying, you cannot do it. I mean, that was like one of the few times that people actually stood up to George Lucas and said, please don't do that. And he just like kind of said, oh, whatever. We'll just keep it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can definitely, Gwendoline Christie can, I mean, think about Carl Urban in Dread, which I don't know if you've ever seen.
I have not seen, but I will do my best to think of it.
Okay. He doesn't take his mask off at all. I mean, you just see his chin the whole time. And even though he's playing a character that is well established and has already been depicted in film, he did a pretty good job for, kind of sidestepping that actor's ego of not showing your face on thing, like the old Saturday Night Live parody of the original trilogy casting with Richard Dreyfuss when he's like, I told you I didn't want to wear the damn mask. I was in Jaws. Guys.
Yeah.
I think I just did that so I could do my really bad impression of Daryl Hammond doing.
I was going to say,
Richard
is
Dreyfuss.
that Wallace Shawn?
Yeah. Inconceivable! I'm going to train Jedi from here to Timbuktu. Sorry. Well, I think we've kind of
start a land war on Mustafar.
Yeah.
Geonosis, I guess.
Geonosis.
You never start a land war on Geonosis.
These are the best tube grubs I've ever had. Oh, sorry. Wrong movie. All right, if I'm doing Deep Space Nine jokes, then maybe it's time to wrap this show up.
I think we've accurate.
I think we've speculated ourselves into a tizzy.
Yeah.
So now's the time.
we went from They Saved Hitler's Brain to Wallace Shawn. I think that's a perfect summation of what our show is.
Yeah, I know. I think people out there, you should be sharing this show up, because if you really want to listen to two guys go off the rails on Star Wars, those other podcasts, all they do is they kiss butt. They kiss that Lucasfilm butt. We're not afraid to bite the cheek that feeds us. I don't know. Anyway, So now that I've offended our listeners, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find a way to reach out and slap us. And one of the best ways is to follow us on Twitter. We are at talkingbirdcast on Twitter.
Yeah.
You can email us at talkingbirdcast@gmail.com. That's right. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/talkingbirdpodcast. We are on Tumblr at talkingbirdStarWars.tumblr.com. I think that's...
Yes.
We are on iTunes. I'd appreciate some people write us a nice review, rate us, get us, talk about us, get us out there. We want to be part of the grand zeitgeist. I want to be signing headshots at Celebration 16.
Yeah.
Oh man!
You want to go to Comic and Toy Con 2037?
Yes, I didn't feel like we didn't have enough episodes under our belt to apply to the LA Podfest, but maybe next year.
Yeah, I know. Maybe next year.
Maybe next year we could be at the LA Podfest. Next year. I just want to get beat up by a bunch of podcasters in LA.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you guys do that Star Wars show? We just tell stories about how hard.
What's funny is that we'll actually know people there.
Yeah, that's actually true.
and do our best to not spend time with them.
They'd be like, "What's your guys' podcast about?
What are you doing here?"
It's like,
"Oh, you have a podcast? Oh, yeah. What do you talk about?" "Oh,
Star Wars." Okay, well, thanks for listening. For Talking Birdcast, I have been Robert Zachary.
And I remain John Llewellyn.
Thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you. Bye.